Personal injury attorney Stewart Vance from the Vance Law Firm in studio to answer your legal questions live on air. As always, we remind our viewers that you are a personal injury attorney. What does that mean?
Absolutely. We help folks who have been injured by no fault of their own. It's as simple as that. If you've been injured to a minor amount or to a severe catastrophic, someone dies in a collision, we help folks or families of people that have been affected by injuries such as that.
So high school football season, college football season, all here. A lot of people will be on the roads, a lot of them later at night than usual, meaning we could see some animals, some creatures, deer. Right. How does that work? If you run into, maybe it's not a deer, maybe it's some sort of large animal.
Right.
What happens? Is it different from if you had a car accident?
Absolutely. That's a great question, Jasmine. I met a guy yesterday in Selma that unfortunately had swerved to miss a deer or multiple deer in the road. And in rural Alabama, that's pretty common. It's a huge difference with insurance companies. If you swerve to miss a car in your lane and there's no contact and you flip off the road, insurance will cover it. However, if it's a deer or another animal, it will not cover it. It's a discrepancy, not a discrepancy, but it's a total difference, distinction in the policy. So, you know, in rural Alabama, I used to live in Camden. I had an office over there in Wilcox County. I still drive a pickup truck. I had a brush guard on the front, and it really isn't for brush. It was for deer, because if you hit the deer, you know, with a truck with a guard like that, it doesn't do damage to the car. The fear becomes somebody that has a car and you're like, oh my gosh, do I hit it or don't hit it? Well, please never swerve to miss it. Try to stop. But gosh, I've seen so many injuries in my profession of people trying to miss, and it's usually deer. I mean, you mentioned other animals. Deer, but it could be a dog.
Possum,
it could be anything. And I'm currently teaching a daughter who's 15 to drive, and that's one of my most important things. Never swerve to miss something like that, because you're only going to do much more damage. It's a sad thing. You don't want to, you don't want to hurt an animal, but gosh, if you,
and sometimes it's just a natural reaction.
It is to swerve, and that's, if it's a person, gosh, yeah, you don't want to hit the person, but if it's an animal, you got to be conscious of never, and it's really a driving, never jerk the wheel off the road. If you can first slow down or avoid it one way or the other. But like the guy yesterday, he couldn't go one way because there was a car coming at him, so he went the other way, and there was a ditch, and he rolled several times and has had several back surgeries. So gosh, and his question was, the insurance company said they wouldn't pay. Well, that's right. There's a portion of your policy, uninsured, underinsured motorist. What that infers is that another motorist had to be the reason for the collision. The distinction is if a car runs you off the road or comes at you and is in your lane and then darts over, that's called a phantom vehicle, because they may not stop. They may never even have touched your vehicle, but the policy would cover that even if you had to swerve and go into the ditch. So it is a fine line, but it is a huge distinction in insurance coverage. So that's a great question. I'm glad you bring it up, because we get that often. So.
And those rural roads, especially, a lot of them are two-lane roads, right. Ditches on both sides. Yep. A lot of times, so it's.
And you're right. At night, all of a sudden they're standing there. It's not like you see them come out necessarily. In the daytime, you do. Hopefully, you can get on the brakes and slow down. But at night, gosh, it's all of a sudden they weren't there and now they are. And yeah, try not to make that decision to swerve, because it can be, terrible, life-altering in this gentleman's case. So.
Deadly and devastating in some cases. So I've been seeing a lot of commercials about different class action lawsuits. Is this something your office handles? Do you handle certain class actions?
We do in certain events. Our firm doesn't file the class actions, but usually how those class actions work, and let's back up a step. A lot of these claims are not class actions. They talk about a large group.
Yes.
I'll give you an example. We were involved with the Camp Lejeune case over in North Carolina, and those are all individual cases. And even the commercial you're talking about, we talked about off the air. I think that one was referring to Ozempic. It's for type 2 diabetes, but it has a side effect that folks lose weight. Well, a lot of people are taking it just to lose the weight, and there have been some side effects. And so the claims and ads that you see for those, they don't file them in a class action. They file them in a group. But what the federal courts usually do is they do a group. They'll make lawyers that have those cases. Multi-district litigation is what they frame it as. And so they say, okay, all you lawyers that have all these cases, you guys get together, and the company can treat those cases hopefully similar. They can set a value for, okay, if someone passed away, that value is going to be X, and then all the way down to I just took it, I had no reaction, that may pay something, may not pay something. So it gets treated sort of like a class action, but it's not a class action. And I know that's a distinction, a legal distinction, but it's worth calling and asking about. So to your point, we are not currently handling those cases. We have been getting calls about that. We may get to the point that we start taking some of those cases, but we aren't right now. But they are something on the horizon, and there are multiple ones out there. The only one I'm aware of that there have been litigation filed is the Ozempic. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not up to speed on them because one pharmaceutical company makes one, another one makes another, and there's a couple more on the market that are coming to the market. So,
but I know the large group that you are handling is the one you mentioned.
That's exactly right. So always call and ask, but that goes back to what I say about everything. Whether it's a car wreck, it's a claim you may think you have with a drug, a pharmaceutical product, or really anything legal-wise. If you've got a question, I've been doing this 26 years. Please call and ask. I talked to the guy yesterday I stopped to get gas in Selma, and he starts asking me a question. I welcome those questions because if you don't ask, you don't know.
And if you wait too long.
Right. You had a group here behind the camera from Santuck. They were taking a tour, and one of them members came up and asked me a question. I do not mind that because I would rather someone ask me and me guide them in the right direction or say, I don't think it's a claim. I don't think you have a claim. And it just, from growing up and talking to family and friends that they didn't know a lawyer. They didn't know who to ask. Now I know so many because I am one and I have peer groups, but there's still a lot of people out there that don't have a lawyer that they can speak to. So please call and ask a question. There's no silly question, I promise you. Call and ask. We can guide you in the right direction.
And the best part about Stewart is if he doesn't handle it, he will tell you, look, I don't handle those cases, but here's some people to call. And so
I will. I'll give out the state bar
yeah.
number all the time. Yes, exactly right.
Stay with us. We have more of our Ask the Attorney segment. When we come back, here's that number to call. It's 420-9732.